Good morning, friends. Welcome back to our morning coffee time for Tuesday, June the 16th. So, the days and nights are relentlessly passing. How well am I spending my time? This is one of our reflections. It comes up in a teaching from the suttas called the 10 Reflections. It's not something I do often, although maybe I should tonight. So for those who tune into the evening chanting tonight, we'll do the 10 Reflections. It's a set that's for monastics, but for any sincere practitioner, I think you can reflect on it and find value in it. The first one is, I'm no longer living according to worldly aims and values. But one of the more memorable bits of it that comes up, and it's a little saying in the monastery too. How well am I spending my time? Because it's so easy to get lost, so easy to let our time slip away and get invested in things that, in the grander scheme of things, don't really serve us all that well. I suppose some people have romantic notions that by becoming a monk or nun and entering a monastery, somehow that problem gets resolved, but it doesn't. Like so many problems. It's resolved with great care, reflection, hard work, practice, and a cultivation of the skillful, and ultimately a sense of presence and a wisdom that knows how to not be heedless and knows how to stay focused on what's truly important. And it doesn't mean you spend your whole day meditating. The path is broad, and the opportunities for practicing skillfulness are broad. So I saw some news article the other day on my phone. One of the more distracting features of having a smartphone these days is they have integrated news feeds into them. And I can't, on mine, let's see, what is it? If I swipe to the right, I think it is, Google has a news feed for me. And I don't find it all that satisfactory, but it's interesting enough that I find myself swiping right more than I would like to. Well, one of the interesting things I saw the other day was there was some news article about a young man who lives in Vermont who just came off a 75-day retreat. And I can't remember, 75-day silent retreat at a meditation center in Vermont. And after the retreat was over, he said, "Did I miss anything?" Which I think is a really interesting question for us to answer. Did he miss anything? Years ago, I remember reading this book about Chinese hermits. I believe it was maybe Red Pine or Bill Porter did a couple trips to China seeking out hermits. And there's one Chinese hermit they found that they were in dialogue with or talking with or interviewing, and at some point he interrupts their questions, and I think he says through the translator, "Who is this Mao guy you keep referring to?" Which just floored me when I read it. Can you imagine? living such a life that he completely missed one of the most monumental features of the 20th century, especially in East Asia. It's interesting contemplation. Is that okay? Is that legal? Are we allowed to do that? Could that be wholly good? I think it can. It resonates with me. Scheming force. I'm not sure how to say this. How your name? Scheming Forsklet. Forsklet. After visiting the four sages of Mount Kai, he lost all interest in the empire. From Zhuangzi. Yeah. And in my morning meditation this morning, the most interesting for me was just this contemplation of how precious the present moment is, informed by mindfulness and understanding. And just reflecting on how the frame of, there's so many ways we can talk about it. But, part of what we mean by delusion is this lack of knowing just how precious it is and how full of potential. With wisdom, knowing how to attend to one's experience is misunderstanding the value of that, misunderstanding the arising of dissonance and dukkha. We so easily discount that, and the orientation is into the past and the future and conceptions of self, finding happiness and fulfillment somewhere other. It's counterintuitive when one experiences dukkha to return to the present moment and to turn inwards. And it really is, on some level, sad that we aren't born with this endowment. It's something that one has to cultivate in one's life. And I think as we mature as practitioners, we develop this sort of sense of how natural and in some sense how simple it is. But I know that I didn't start off there. And I know that all the efforts to practice selflessness, to do good and skillful things, to cultivate virtue, to develop renunciation, presence of mind, and to really try to unpack and understand what it is the Buddha is pointing at. And to be able to let that speak to my own experience of consciousness in relationship to the problem of dukkha. I know that all informs that movement and that ability to know how valuable that is, and also to know how to set up the conditions so that one knows how to connect with that and remember the value of that. And I was feeling especially inarticulate, even in my meditation, just contemplating that. But with all sincerity, that's the thing that's most alive in my mind this morning. It's both an appreciation of that and remembrance of that, and a determination to try to connect and nurture that through how I spend my time today. So, and yet I'm relatively confident that I'll fail in various ways to be true to that. But that's why we call it practice. A little bit of news. I've got a few emails from people chasing down Dhammapadas, and that's quite nice. And someone also offered to send me a printed copy of that Oxford edition that I mentioned. And I see M. Vander is here this morning. He sent me some emails as well about different editions. I haven't fully caught up with my emails, and I can't respond to all the emails. So let's see, where is it? Yeah, this John Ross Carter edition. The older editions, I think, are the best because they have come out with various editions, and there's several that lack the commentary, which is one of the more valuable parts of that particular edition. And like I said, it's one of the ones I find most interesting, and one of the ones I turn to as K.R. Norman's as well, and that's K.R., like his initials, Norman, and he was a linguist and a scholar and president of the Polytext Society, I think, for many years. So his edition, I believe, is published by the Polytext Society. There's another one I didn't mention, though, that I quite like, by Glenn Wallis. And he's a practitioner and a scholar. And his version is very interesting in some of the language he uses. Like he's made various attempts, I think, to bring it into an American vernacular, which is a project that's kind of dear to my heart. Sometimes the literalists and the linguists dislike such attempts. So sometimes when I talk to my friends and tell them I like this Glenn Wallis version, they say, wow, he translates this as that, and that's not right. And even myself, some of his choices I don't fully resonate with or endorse, but I find having a wealth of translations in our language is a blessing, not a curse. So, yeah, Glenn Wallis's translation of the Dhammapada, that's another one that I suggest people investigate. And when I was looking it up to see if it was still in print and just refresh my memory, I see that he's published a new book that looks very interesting too. So I can't remember the title, but something about how Buddhism has failed or something like that. There's increasingly some very interesting books being published. So Ladawan, who's here most mornings in the coffee time, let me know yesterday that Ajahn Sona has a Dhamma talk coming up this Saturday, Saturday the 20th of June at 3:30 p.m. Ajahn Ritti of Wat Atam has been organizing some talks, and Ajahn Sona will be giving a talk. I can't remember the title. I think it's something like Awareness in a Time of Pandemic. Let me see if Equanimity in the Time of the Pandemic. So if you visit Wat Atamyarata's website, or maybe Ladawan can put a link to the page on their website that has the information. It's going to be a talk on Zoom. So, and then I wasn't able to watch the full thing yesterday, but I watched maybe the first third or half of a new talk from Lumpur Sumedho. He was the first Western disciple of Ajahn Chah, and did so much to bring monastic opportunities to the West and help build monasteries. And he's living in Thailand right now. He was due to move back to England this year, but because of the pandemic, I think plans for that are on hold right now. But I put a link to that latest talk from Lumpur Sumedho, and he's addressing kind of situation in the world in this talk. So I can't remember the exact title, but it was nice to listen to him. Maybe today I'll go back and finish the rest of it. But it's great to have him still giving Dhamma in his 80s, and still very much in touch with what's going on in the world and reflecting on it based on his experience practice. So. Okay, well, let's see if we got any questions here. Dear Ajahn, could you please address methods for arousing Piti? From Ray. Yeah. Well, Ray, the arousing of Piti, the best way is to deal with the hindrances. And if one deals with the hindrances in a fairly concerted way or profound way, then Piti should arise quite naturally. So by withdrawing our wrong-headed investment in sense desire and ill will, balancing energy and effort, freeing ourselves or not getting stuck in doubt, one arouses a wholesome state of mind and cultivates and sustains attention on that. And when we're able to do that with a certain measure of success and the hindrances are weakened or suppressed, then Piti will arise in some form in the mind. And accompanied by sukha, Piti sukha. They're said to be almost like twin qualities, especially as they arise in the first jhana. So joy and happiness, one being a bit more physical, one being a bit more mental, one being a bit more edgy and alive and agitating on some level, exciting, and one being a bit more mental and refined. So one has a feel for it and a taste for it. One can induce Piti or invite Piti to be aroused, and we can especially do so in conjunction with the object of our meditation. So for me, the primary way is either through Metabhavana or breath meditation. So, and to me, there's various perceptions and features of the breath that in particular are, well, not just the breath, but the breath and the arousing of appropriate attention that are experienced in the mind and the body, which arouse this joy and delight in the mind. So, and you do want to delight in your meditation. You want to encourage a sense of delight in both watching the meditation develop and watching skillful qualities arise. You don't want to lose your poise. You don't want to lose focus on the meditation, but very skillful to learn how to delight in skillful qualities of mind, sort of that are born of the effort of being with the object of meditation in the right way. So, to me, if I pay attention to just the energetic quality of the breath sometimes, I don't know how to describe it. It seems miraculously, indescribably complex and alive. Just the sensation of breathing. And that for me can be a little bit of a opportunity to just delight in being present for that and being with that. And the more wholly I can be with it, the more delightful it is. And there's like a virtuous feedback cycle that develops. But through practice and experience, you should know for yourself and take a special note of things that help move the mind in those ways, and then learn how to skillfully balance those in your practice. So, okay, scrolling on. Good morning, Jill. Now that we have your picture here, I think I recognize you. Ajahn, could you please talk about how to deal with obsessive thinking around others' lack of social distancing? I find myself constantly frustrated and angry with others not following guidelines. Yeah, there's a couple ways that we can go with that. I mean, one of the first things that comes to mind was in our retreat with Ajahn Sona in early May. He did talk about attention to the fault and just what a dangerous strategy that is. And you wouldn't be asking this question if you didn't already have some sort of awareness that it's causing suffering, nurturing obsessiveness. But I'm going to guess that you're not merely just obsessively thinking about it. There's a level of frustration and annoyance, perhaps, with it. And one needs to free oneself from that. So, I find myself constantly frustrated and angry with others not following guidelines. Yeah. Yeah, you need to focus on sorting yourself out in this dimension here. You can't let this be a cause for arousing unskillful states of mind, like frustration and anger. So, so you really need to practice not giving it attention, and I mean, in particular, like not dwelling on it or not focusing on it. You need to find ways to focus your mind in other ways. And of course, you don't want to ignore sort of noticing that people are not practicing um, social distancing or something, because uh, you need to make some decisions of yourself about what's skillful and how to adjust to that. And I'm not advocating um, merely just ignoring it or being apathetic about having experienced people acting in ways that don't feel safe to you, um, and don't fit how you maybe rightfully or understanding they should be acting uh, in a more skillful way that's considerate of others. So, um, but also, there's a lot of uncertainty around this kind of stuff. Remember, the Surgeon General was telling us that masks aren't all that protective and we shouldn't be wearing them. And then now they're on the other side. And, without getting all political about it, the truth of it is there are things that are known, but there is a certain kind of uncertainty about exactly how to quantify what one should be doing. So, um, and that can help. That and reflections like that can kind of help nurture equanimity, which can also help with this. Uh, and then other ways that I find myself seeking balance around people not doing what we understand is skillful, or people not doing what we have agreed to do, or like collectively. Like this comes up in the monastery all the time. There's various rules and regulations, and one sees people ignoring them, sometimes through a lack of mindfulness, sometimes because they haven't fully bought in, like they don't honor the decision that the community's made or the standard that the community has established. But uh, on some deeper level, sometimes they're just incapable, like the conditions that would support them um, just according with the convention or the agreement or the protocol or the rule are just not present. So quite literally, on some level, they can't. That's not to say it's right. That's not to say it's skillful, but like the conditions supporting them acting otherwise are not yet there. So, and um, me feeling frustrated and angry uh, does harm to me, and it doesn't necessarily do anything to create the proper conditions uh, so that they might comply. So, something like this can be a little extra charge, of course, because you know, we might feel personally that it's a threat to us. So, I understand there can be a real extra charge to this, but it's important to guard one's mind uh, and stay close to uh, putting a lot of energy into that, as opposed to trying to fix problems on the outside and then trying to then respond as skillfully as one can according to the circumstance or situation, and with kindness, with patience, with equanimity. Uh, Good morning, Holly. I love your icon. Field of, I mean, it's pretty small on my screen. It's about the size of my thumb, but it looks like a field of poppies, somewhat dark in the foreground, moving to something lighter and brighter in the background. I feel more vulnerable, tender, and open, and occasionally raw. Sorry, let me put that back up. During this pandemic time. This feels helpful on the gradual path. Could you comment? Well, my comment, or the thing that strikes me sort of reading that is the Buddha's comment on how our tendency is towards a certain heedlessness that's there in our life when things seem well. So when we feel safe and we feel the world is relatively secure and relatively okay or something, we tend to be a bit, or we tend to be heedless, and we tend to be a little bit more routine, maybe even slightly asleep and out of touch. And when that is stripped away and we feel like anything can happen, there's great uncertainty, danger, maybe impending tragedy or something. Some of that heedlessness falls away, and we become much more sensitive and alert, and it also tends to, there's more energy, and some of that energy is channeled into emotional responses and reactions. So it's like the volume's turned up. When life is feels safe and secure and predictable and routine, it's like the volume's down. And when that falls away, it's like the intensity goes up. I feel that way when I go on retreat, though, oftentimes. So it might have a lot to do with just energy. Let's see. Jeannie, I like that question. Maybe we'll come back to it. Please ask that again another day. I think I'm going to end with Shelley's question here. So, good morning, Shelley. Ajahn, have you gone for any period of not meditating to compare meditation to? I have, in many different ways. So, I've gone through all times of periods where I'm only meditating a couple hours a day. There are days, I've had days where I don't do any formal meditation. So, and I've gone through periods of weeks or even months, where I'm not doing much formal practice for whatever reason. There's a lot of work, or I've been spending more of my free time doing studying or something. And then, yeah, it's easy. It's interesting to compare that to times where you have more meditation to see what the effect of the mind is, because we do get habituated even to the benefits of it. And I think one of the most interesting things is we can sometimes miss some of the broader benefits that are there in our practice. Like we're so focused on how we're failing as a meditator, or how the experience and how we talk about it to ourselves and frame it sort of doesn't match the ideals that we have for our practice. And one could be glossing over and missing and just not, or otherwise not content with some of the other benefits that are present in there. So either we don't notice them, or we're not content and humble enough to appreciate them, and until they're gone. So it's interesting to mix things up sometime. The most profound way, of course, is to have a more concerted period of practice. And then, when you come away from that and return to your normal habits, or, where you can't practice as much, you see this change. And in particular, you just notice how much easier it is to suffer, and how much easier it is to lose the balance of the mind, the equanimity, the metta, the presence of mind that helps support more skillful states and lack of suffering. So, Phil, I miss the garden parties at the Hermitage. Yeah, me too. So I might mention to people that live in the area. We have had a few people come to help do some weeding and pruning, and people can do that. That's a plenty safe activity. And if you want to come appreciate the garden at the Hermitage, you can do that. We can't yet sort of resume the garden parties, I think, but maybe not. Maybe before the summer's out, we can have those gatherings again. I don't think the time for it is yet, but Phil, if you're interested, just to come spend some time helping out, there's always little projects here, and it can be a really nice hour or two just to kind of come and be here. And all right, I'm going to leave it at this today. So I hope you all have a good day, and don't get lost. And remember, you don't need to go far to find that place where suffering ceases and happiness arises. Don't trust that lying mind. Happiness does not exist somewhere out there on the horizon. You being somewhere else, being somebody else, getting rid of something. Don't trust that. It's right here in the present moment. Just need to build the conditions to appreciate it. So, be well, friends. See you tomorrow.